Imagine living in a world where nobody had ever explained what death was. No graves, no funerals, no words for loss. One day, someone you love simply stopped moving. For millions of years, our ancestors watched animals disappear, predators hunted, old creatures collapsed, bones slowly vanished into the earth. Death had always existed, but understanding it was something entirely different. Imagine a small group of hunter-gatherers, nearly 100,000 years ago. The day had begun like every other, hunting, gathering, protecting children. Then something changed. At first, they probably waited. Minutes became hours, hours became night. As maybe they touched the body, maybe they called, and maybe they expected the person to wake up. Because if nobody had ever understood death, sleep and death might have looked exactly the same. The sun came up, but nothing changed. They didn't breathe. They didn't move. For the first time, someone realized this wasn't sleep. This was something permanent. Soon, another problem appeared. The body could stay there forever. Animals would find it. The smell would spread. The group had to make a choice, one that no one had ever made before. What do we do now? Then, someone picked up a stone and began digging. Not to build a shelter, not to find food, but to protect someone who would never move again. It may have been the first grave. One handful of earth, then another. Slowly, the body disappeared beneath the ground. For the first time, the living chose to protect the dead. That simple act may have changed humanity forever. The grave was finished, but no one moved. They stood there, staring at the earth. Someone who had been with them yesterday was now gone forever. And without realizing it, humanity may have experienced its first grief. Fear slowly became questions. Where did they go? Will they come back? Could the same thing happen to me? Nobody had answers. Yet those questions may have become the beginning of philosophy, religion, and humanity's endless search for meaning. Eventually, someone made a choice. Instead of abandoning the bottle, they covered it, not because they fully understood death, but because something inside them had changed. Thousands of years later, archaeologists would discover ancient graves proving this wasn't an accident. But how do we know this really happened? The answer was buried beneath the earth. Archaeologists began digging, and what they found changed our understanding of human history forever. On discovery, shocked archaeologists in Israel, they uncovered a grave nearly 100,000 years old. The body hadn't been thrown away. It had been carefully placed. This wasn't an accident. It was one of humanity's oldest known burials. And it wasn't just our ancestors. Neanderthals may have buried their dead too, in caves across Europe and the Middle East. Archaeologists found bodies placed with unusual care. Some were laid in sleeping positions. Others had injuries that showed they had been cared for during the life. Compassion may be older than our own species. Before that moment, survival was enough, but after death, humans began to remember. They began to mourn. They began to tell stories, and those stories became the beginning of civilization. The first person to mourn the dead never knew they were changing history. That single moment became the beginning of love beyond life, the beginning of memory, the beginning of us. Today, every culture on Earth buries, remembers, or honors its dead. Different traditions, different beliefs, but the same human feeling. It all began with one impossible goodbye. Every time we visit a grave, and every time we remember someone we've lost, every flower, every candle, every silent goodbye is part of a tradition that may have begun over 100,000 years ago. Even today, scientists still don't know who experienced the first funeral or whose hands placed the very first stones over the very first grave. Their names disappeared with time. Maybe it wasn't fear that created the first grave. Maybe it was love, a love that refused to simply walk away. And perhaps that's what truly made us human. 100,000 years later, we still visit graves. We still leave flowers, we still cry, we still remember, because deep inside, we are still connected to that very first goodbye.